Hello, and thank you for choosing to once again watch a New Life video. I'm Matt with New Life Church, continuing this series covering the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. We've gotten to the end of the life. We're getting to the end of the life of Joseph, one of the patriarchs of the faith who lived his faith out. Showed lots of patience, showed lots of faith. He went through the roughest times you can imagine, and he came through it still serving God. We're in Genesis chapter 50, right after his father died, when Jacob died. Chapter 50. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. That was quite a long time they were mourning for him. Now when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Behold, I am dying. In my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan, there you shall bury me. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back." So he wants to bury Joseph in the land of Canaan. Actually, it's in the same tomb that Abraham had originally gotten for Sarah, where Abraham was buried, where Isaac was buried, and so forth. So, verse 6, And Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear." So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the house of Joseph, his brothers, his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks and their herds they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great gathering. Can you imagine? Verse 11 will say what the inhabitants of Canaan thought when they saw it, but just imagine seeing all this great procession. So verse 10, Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father. So let's keep track of this. What was it? 70 days before they even asked to take this trip. Mm-hmm. Give a few days for getting ready for the trip.
Yeah.
That's quite a long time for mourning. Nowadays, we try to get it all wrapped up in a week. They mourned for him. So verse 11, when the inhabitants of the land the Canaanites, saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, "This is a deep mourning of the Egyptians." Therefore, its name was called Abel Mizraim, which means literally mourning of Egypt, which is beyond the Jordan. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, before Mamre, which Abraham bought with a field from Ephron the Hittite, as property for a burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. So they came back. Verse 15, When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "Perhaps Joseph will hate us, and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him." So, do you remember from previous lessons what evil they had done to him? They had...
Sold him into slavery?
Yeah. They jumped him, put him in a pit, took him out of the pit to sell him into slavery. So they're worried, okay, now that Dad's dead, is he now going to have his revenge on us? So they sent messengers to Joseph, saying, "Before your father died, he commanded, saying, Thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of your servants of the God of your father, of the servants of the God of your father." And Joseph wept when they spoke to him. It's interesting that he wept there. Was he weeping because they thought that now, after all this time, now he's going to have revenge? Or did he weep that they're still feeling guilty about what they'd done, because before they wouldn't have felt any guilt? The Bible doesn't say. It just says that he wept. And verse 18, "Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face, and they said, Behold, we are your servants. Joseph said to them, Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as is this day, to save many people alive." It's amazing the way that God can take something negative and turn it positive. "Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household. And Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children to the 3rd generation. The children of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brethren, "I am dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land into the land of which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." You know what that means? He didn't forget, even though things were going good for him in Egypt, even though he was second to Pharaoh in Egypt, he remembered that the promise of God was for Canaan land. And he knew that God was going to bring it to pass. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, "God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here." So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. That's the end of the book of Genesis. Now, what it says about him in Hebrews 11's Hall of Faith, about this great patriarch of the faith. It says in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 22, "By faith Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel, and gave instructions concerning his bones." He did a lot of things by faith, all the way up to the end. He served God through his life, and he died well in the faith. And he knew that God would bring them back to Canaan, and he gave instructions. So then the question might be, if he gave those instructions, were they carried out? I think that's a reasonable question. I'm glad you asked. In the book of Exodus, which is the second book of the Bible, where Moses is bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt, it says in chapter 13, verse 19, it specifically mentions this, "And Joseph took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had placed the children of Israel under solemn oath, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here with you." So Moses made sure that they did take the bones of Joseph with them. And furthermore, more is said about them. In Joshua, this is after Moses was dead, in the last chapter of Joshua, chapter 24, Verse 32. At the end of the conquest of Canaan land, it says, the bones of Joseph, which the children of Israel had brought up out of Egypt, they buried at Shechem, in the plot of ground which Jacob had bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver, which had become an inheritance of the children of Joseph. So he was buried in Canaan. It's interesting to think about that throughout all the things you read about in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, and Joshua, the bones of Joseph were around during that whole time. They did keep their oath. And Joseph was right that God did visit Israel. You know, why was he right that God would visit Israel? Because he had learned that you can trust God. He had learned when he was sold into slavery that God was with him then. He had learned even when he was set up for attempted rape and was thrown in prison, God was with him then. He had learned even when he was forgotten in that prison by the guy he had helped, God was still with him. Throughout all his life, he served God. You know, you do not have to fail. You do not have to fall. You can serve God through everything. Yes, if you do fall, there is forgiveness. You can come back. There's restoration. But I just like to point out, you do not have to fall. I've seen lots of people fall. But if you hold on to God through everything, through your whole life, he will be there always. Joseph had learned throughout his whole life, you can trust God. And so it wasn't a stretch of his imagination for him to continue trusting God throughout about that promise that Canaan would belong to the descendants of Israel. And so it was very easy for him to say, you know, I want to be buried there in the promised land. So the question is, first of all, have you trusted God? You know, it's easy. It really is easy to put your trust in God. God did not make it some big elaborate process where you have to crawl from the land of Israel to Egypt on your knees. You do not have to climb the highest mountain. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. But then afterwards, I encourage everyone who has not done that to please do that. But afterwards, you can continue to trust in Jesus. You should continue to trust in Jesus because he will bring you through. Not necessarily the way that you think he's going to bring you through. Joseph certainly didn't have his life go the way he thought it would go. I don't think that in his 5-year plan of where he wanted to be, he didn't say, slave in Egypt as my plan for greatness. Prisoner. That wasn't part of his plan. Sometimes what God's plan for us goes through ways we couldn't imagine. And if we knew about it beforehand, we'd probably run away. But we need to trust in God. He understands the end from the beginning. We don't. God's ways are above our ways, past finding out. A lot of times we don't understand what God has planned for us and what God is doing with us. But we just need to keep trusting, keep being faithful. If when Joseph was finally called before Pharaoh, he had turned his back on God after one disappointment too many, then the plan for him to be second in command of Egypt, to save those lives, to save his family, wouldn't have come to pass. But because he was still faithfully serving God, God was able to continue using him. That's the point of all these heroes of faith. They trusted God, and God was able to use them and bring about a great deliverance. I hope this has been a blessing. And next time we'll continue with another hero of faith listed in Hebrews chapter 11. Until then, Go with God.